we're going to go to two more points here. Page 1062, 2 lines. So about one or more intriguing mitzvahs in the Torah. Very, really intriguing mitzvah. And when you hear the mitzvah and then the depth of the mitzvah, it's a fascinating explanation based on the Alshich HaKodesh. The Alshich was one of the great Kabbalists who lived in Sfas in the 16th century. Fascinating concept. So it says like this: Ki yeshu achim yachdov, when there are two brothers living together, Umeis achad mehen, one of them dies. Bottom line on page 1062. Umeis achad mehen, uben ein lo, he has no children. Lo sia eshes hameis hachutza leish zor. The wife of the deceased must not marry somebody else. Yevama yovo eleha, her brother-in-law must marry her. Ulekacha lo leisha v'yibma, he will take her as a wife, and it's called Levirate marriage. The brother-in-law marries the wife of the deceased brother who left no children. Had he left children, then the brother-in-law would it's not only not a mitzvah for him to marry her, he's not even allowed to marry her. He's not allowed to marry her if there were surviving children. If there were no surviving children, then he has a mitzvah. Well, I'm going to cover all details. I'll try to cover all details anyway. We'll see in a second. The firstborn who she gives birth to afterwards, Yakum al Shem Achiv Hames, he shall be established on the name of his deceased brother. Lo Yimacheh Shemo Yisrael, his name should not be erased. And Kabbalistically, we understand that the soul of the brother who's deceased comes back in that child. If the man does not want to marry her, the also Yavimto Ashara El Azkanim, she goes to the elders, that means the Beis Din. The Amra, she says, Me'ein Yavami L'Hakim L'Achiv Shem B'Yisrael. My Yavam, my brother-in-law, refuses to reestablish a name for his brother. Lo Ova Yabmi, he does not want to perform levirate marriage. V'Kara Lo Ziknei Iro, the elders of the town call him. V'Dibru Elav, they speak to him. In other words, they try to convince them he should go through with it. V'Amad v'Amar Lo Chafatzi L'Kachta. Then he stands his ground. He says, I do not want to marry her. So what does she do then? V'niksha yavimto elav leinaz kenim. She approaches him. V'cholza nalo me'aragol. She removes his shoe. V'yorka b'fanov. She spits in front of him. She does not spit in his face. Don't not mistranslate v'yorka b'fanov. Yorka b'fanov is not translated. She spits in his face. She spits on the ground in front of him. V'ansa v'amra kacha yasa leisha shelo yivdas beis lachiv. This is what should be done to a man who refuses to build his brother's house. V'nikra shemot b'Yisrael beis Chalitzah nal, and he is called the one with the removed shoe. Beis Chalitzah nal. He is the one who has had his shoe removed. Now, this is a halachic, practical halacha. Nowadays, if a man dies childless and he has a surviving brother, so then the halacha is that nowadays Yibum is not performed. The brother does not marry the sister-in-law because the Gemara says nowadays people do not have the proper intent when doing such a thing. In the time of the Gemara, the time of the Torah was given, a man could marry his sister-in-law with proper intent for the mitzvah. Whereas nowadays, the assumption is a man who engages in that activity, he's not going to manage to muster up the proper intent and the proper devotion in doing the mitzvah, and therefore better they should separate than do the mitzvah. And it was they go through what's called the Chalitzah ceremony. Chalitzah ceremony is they go to Beis Din, the shoe is removed. Beis Din has a special shoe, and all the Beis Din there's a special shoe. He puts on his shoe, a slipper of some sort. She removes the shoe from his foot. She spits on the ground, and she is now free to marry anybody she wants. That means when the brother dies, if there are any other brothers, she's actually bonded to the brothers. She's bonded to them. She cannot marry somebody else until the surviving brother either marries her or he releases her. That's the famous Chalitzah. Hold all the questions for a few minutes. Let me cover it first. Then if there's anything that's not clear, you'll ask. Now, so nowadays the Chalitzah is done, and you could run into very tricky halachic situations. One of them was before the Iron Curtain was down, you'd have a woman who's living in America who's married to a husband, and the husband dies, he's got a brother in Russia. And the brother cannot get out of Russia, and therefore this woman is in a tricky situation because now she can't she can't marry somebody else, and he can't get out of Russia. And there were cases like that which occurred. Well, the most heartbreaking case that I heard was a couple got married, and a short time after the marriage, the husband died. He was about 23, 24 years old. He got sick and he died, and he had a younger brother who was 2 years old. which means they have to wait 10 years, now 11 years till he's bar mitzvah in order to do the chalitzah. She can't do anything for 10 or 11 years. Yeah, that's how they wait. And it's unfortunately, it's unfortunate, yeah, it's very unfortunate, but that's the halacha. And it's, they even asked, I think they asked Rabbi Yashiv, what do you do? And Rabbi Yashiv said, you have to do what the Torah says to do. We're limited in what could be done. So it's unfortunate, it's not always easy. That is what the mitzvah. Now, what's really going on here? So the Ramban, one of you I think mentioned yesterday about Yehuda, who had two sons who died. Now, when his first son died, the second son then married Tamar. Right? The second son married. When died, Onan married her. When Onan died, Yehuda married her. Now, the Ramban says over there in the book of Bereshis, he says, the ancients knew the secret. And the secret that when a brother dies unmarried, the next brother should marry him is good for his soul. Apparently that was a secret that they knew already then before the Torah was even given, and that's why Yehuda did it, and that's why the next of kin marries her. Now here you'll notice the Torah says that the firstborn son, Yokum al Shem Achiv Hames. He should take on, he reestablishes the name of the deceased brother. Now, people mistakenly think that he has to be named the same name as the brother. It's not true. It's not true. The Torah just says, Yokum al Shem Achiv Hames. So what does that mean? So I think you've heard at some point or other that the letters of the word neshama, everybody has a soul. Nun, shin, mem, he. What are the two middle letters of neshama? Name. Shem. In other words, the two middle letters are that your name, the name that you're given, is actually a description of the essence of your neshama. When parents name you, parents, we believe, are divinely inspired, even though they have a whole calculation. Well, Grandpa's Hebrew name was Ephraim, and Uncle Charlie's Hebrew name was Chaim, so we're going to call him Ephraim Chaim, but we like Chaim better, so we're going to call Chaim Ephraim. Right? And after all their calculations, there's something about the name that is divinely inspired. They're divinely inspired, and therefore this person gets that name, and it's a description of your essence, whatever that means. Now, what happens is like this. The idea of having children, a person who is alive wants to have a certain continuity in this world. A man dies childless, and if he dies childless, there is only one way for his neshama to have a continuity. The only way his neshama could have a continuity is if his brother marries his wife, and they have a child that will provide the shem. The essence of his neshama will come back in that child, and that will give him the continuity that every neshama wants. It'll give him the continuity. Now, the problem is if the brother does not want to marry the sister-in-law, and generally, if he doesn't want to, it has to do with attraction. He does not. He is allowing his material or physical side to get the best of him. And therefore, he is embarrassed to a certain extent. It's an embarrassing procedure to have a woman, to have anybody spit on you. Spitting is always regarded in every society, spitting is regarded as disrespectful. And there are certain fines I think if you spit on somebody, and even in secular law, there's a certain fine you could get because it's regarded as being a big guy. When Ted Williams spat at the fans, right? That was, or he spat at the what do you call it? At the reporters. That was considered, it made headline news. Somebody spat at, I think Roberto Alomar also was a baseball player who once spit at an umpire. I say, okay, there's something about spitting. There's something about spitting which is considered inherently embarrassing, disrespectful. So she spits on the ground and she removes his shoe. What does that mean? What does removing the shoe mean? So I'll show you a very interesting idea. You have a body. We even have an expression in English. We say, boy, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. Right? You ever use that expression? I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. Mm-hmm. Now, even if you were in his shoes, and even he who is in his shoes, how much of him is in his shoes? A very low percentage of you is in your shoes, right? I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. Don't worry, you can't get in. There's no room for you. There's barely room for him. It only covers his feet. So, yeah, we use that expression. So what the idea is like this. How much of your body is in your shoe? Very little, very small part. The shoe serves a purpose. Your body is very delicate. You have delicate little feet. And the earth is very coarse. The earth is very coarse. By the way, a comedian once said, if you could stare at your toes for a minute and not start laughing, then you've got no sense of humor, right? Yeah. So toes are just interesting. What can I tell you? So if when you're in your shoes provide the buffer that allows your body, which is delicate, to walk around on the very coarse earth, and very small part of your body is in your shoe. Okay. Now, the neshama. How much of your neshama is in your body? Because we don't know anything about neshamas. We think, well, I have my 5'7" neshama, and you've got your 6'2" neshama. You've got your 5'9" neshama, and everybody, this is my neshama, and this is your neshama. My neshama is a little thinner. Your neshama is a little thicker. We think of our neshama goes basically from head to toe. That's a mistake. Our neshama is barely in our body. The overwhelming majority of our neshama is the part that extends from here all the way up to God's divine throne. Now, the neshama is very delicate. And the neshama has to live in a very crude, coarse world. What is the vehicle that allows the neshama to walk around in this world? It's called our body. That means our body to the neshama is parallel to a shoe to a body. Do you understand where we're going with this? What didn't he want to do? Your brother's neshama wants continuity, wants to be in this world. He needs a Shem. And you're not willing to provide the physical body for his neshama to be in this world. Oh, what do we do symbolically? She removes his shoe. Because in the physical realm, the shoe to the body corresponds, is the parallel of the body to the soul. You didn't want to provide a body for his neshama. We symbolically remove your shoe, which represents his body. Your shoe represents the body for the soul, because your shoe to your body is like your body to your soul. And therefore his shoe is removed, symbolically showing that she did not want to allow continuity for the soul. There's a very interesting story. Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski, I don't know if any of you have ever heard him. He was the unchallenged Jewish leader after the Chafetz Chaim passed away. Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski was the Rav of Vilna. And he was really the leader of the Jewish people before the Second World War. Then he was Nifter, and then the Chazon Ish, I'm sure you've heard of, he became the unchallenged leader. But Reb Chaim Ozer Grzinski was really the leader of Lithuanian Jewry. And Reb Chaim Ozer Grzinski, it was right before Rosh Hashanah, and he was not a well man, and he was told by his doctors that he has to go to some spa. There's some sort of spa somewhere. They used to go to these, somewhere in Russia, Poland, wherever it was, they used to go to these spas. And he had to spend the high holidays in this spa. He was very upset. He wanted to stay with his community in Vilna. But if a doctor gives you orders, it becomes a mitzvah to follow the orders of the doctor. So Chaim Ozer Grzinski goes up to this little spa somewhere. They barely get a minyan together for Rosh Hashanah, and he's very upset. Why would God put me, Rosh Hashanah of all times, why does God move me out over here where I got barely a minyan of people? Okay, he's there for Rosh Hashanah. And then the Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is called Shabbos Shuvah. So he goes to Shul Shabbos Shuvah. Again, 12, 14 people in a shul. And a man walks in, and he walks over, Rabbi Chaim Ozer walks over to him and says, Shalom Aleichem, what's your name? So he says, my name is Chaim Goldstein. He says, what are you doing here? He says, on my way to St. Petersburg. He says, what's in St. Petersburg? He says, well, my brother died, and he left a wife and 3 children. And, she's having trouble. So we felt that the most efficient thing to do would be for me to marry her. And that way, we would take care of the problem. So Chaim Ozer looks at the man, he says, hey, you're not allowed to marry her. You're not allowed to marry her. It's only, he says, no, Yibum. He says, my friend, the Levirate marriage. Chaim Ozer says, no, Yibum only applies if there are no children. If there are children and you marry her, that's an act of adultery. It's tantamount to adultery, and any subsequent children are mamzerim. You're not allowed to marry her. And he says, no, Yibum. He says, no, I'm telling you, you can't. He says, look, I'm not an educated Jew. I don't know a whole lot. If the rabbi of Vilna, Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski, would tell me I'm not allowed to do it, then I would listen. But otherwise, I'm going. He says, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Chaim Ozer Grzinski of Vilna. So Chaim Ozer said afterwards, I think I might have an idea why HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me here for the high holidays, to prevent the tragedy of the Jewish people. So it's a very severe thing. You can't do that. That doesn't work. That is the mitzvah of Yibum and Chalitzah. Okay.
Only if they don't have kids.
Only if they do not have kids.
What if she doesn't want to?
If she doesn't want to, she is advised by the Beza. They try to convince her, but she's not forced. Not forced. You can't violate her. Yeah.
What if the brother is already married?
He could marry by Torah law, since he could have more than one wife, so he marries her. By Torah law. Remember, by Torah law.
By Ashkenazi law?
By Ashkenazi law. By Torah, Ashkenazi law. The Torah is Ashkenazi and the Torah is Sephardi. The Torah is universal. In Sephardi, in Ashkenazi law, it's since the Takon of Rabbi Meir, Rabbeinu Gershom, Maor Hagolah, for about 1,000 years ago, that we're not allowed to take more than one wife. But by Torah law, it's perfectly acceptable. And as a matter of fact, in certain Sephardi communities, they never accepted his ruling. He was in Europe. They never accepted his ruling, and they had a problem when the state of Israel was created, and you had the Aliyah from Sephardi countries like Morocco and Yemen and these sorts of places. There were people who came here with two wives. Now the law of the land was that what's it called, polygamy? Yeah. Polygamy. What's two husbands is polyandry. Polygamy is against the law, so they passed a ruling in the country that anybody who's already married to two wives is allowed to keep them, but that no one subsequently is allowed to. But in Sephardi law, they did not accept that ruling. By the way, do you know what co-wives are called? You know, a sister and a sister-in-law. There's a sister-in-law, a mother-in-law, a brother-in-law. There's a chatan, a chotain, gisa. These are all the names. You know what co-wives, the relationship between them, are called? They're called a tzara. Leah is a tzara to Rachel if they share a husband. Leah and Rachel are called a tzara. That's the official halacha. Exactly. Well, why do you think it is? Why do you think it is?
Because it creates tension.
Of course. The two of them do not get along. It does create tension. It certainly does create tension. And therefore they are called tzaras. They're called each other's tzara. That is the official Talmudic term for a co-wife. One of the reasons a man's not allowed to marry two sisters. There's a halacha that a man cannot marry two sisters. There's a reason a man can't marry two sisters. Because there is a natural enmity between co-wives, and two sisters theoretically get along. Nobody's seen my daughters, but two sisters theoretically get along. Therefore, for a man to marry two sisters, there's a certain insensitivity because you're driving a wedge in a relationship where there should be none. Because the two of them, technically by letter law, the two of them get along. Therefore, a man cannot marry two sisters. If one sister dies, then a man is allowed to marry her surviving sister. That is permissible according to halacha. Not only it's permissible, in Jewish history it was done quite frequently because before the 20th century, where there was a very high mortality rate for childbirth mortality rate, women were dying. And when a woman dies, a woman who dies in childbirth is usually a young woman who probably has other children, and therefore the most logical person to raise the children then becomes the surviving sister. I know of two cases. There was one case of a woman in my neighborhood who was nifter, and while she was sick for a long time. While she was sick, her sister had been in the house helping out, and then she passed away. And about 6 months later, the husband married the sister. That was the most logical thing. Actually, no, three cases. I know a rabbi in Chicago who was married for many, many, many years, probably over 50 years, and there was a spinster. He was married to his wife and the spinster sister who lived with them. She lived with them, and then the wife was nifter. The wife was nifter first, then they had a problem because now you have a problem with yichud, because this is now his sister-in-law, and they're living in the same house. The man was in his 70s already, 70s, close to 80, and they're living in the same house. Now, what do you do? They got a problem. The two of them can't be under the same roof. The wife is not there. You got a problem with yichud. So they just did the logical thing. They got married. They didn't have to go out too much. They were living under the same roof for 50 years, so they basically knew each other. So they But then there was another story here. So this was a tragic story that actually had a happy ending. Baruch Hashem. There was a woman named Rachel Weiss. Maybe some of you have heard it. You could probably find it online. What happened was there was a terrorist attack on a bus, and there was a woman named Rachel Weiss who got on a bus with 3 children. And there was a terrorist attack. The bus, I think, was coming to Yerushalayim from around the Bet Shan. I forgot where they were. And there was a terrorist attack, and the bus caught fire. And Rachel Weiss could have gotten off the bus, but she couldn't get her kids off the bus. So she stayed with her children. And she died with her children on the bus. I think there was an Israeli soldier who tried to save them, and he also died. And then what happened was, they didn't know where the brother, sometime later, the father of Rachel Weiss, who had died, suggested that the son-in-law marry her sister. Her sister became of age to get married, and he suggested the son-in-law should marry the sister. But then it became a question because they were never bodies. They never found bodies because they were burnt. They were incinerated on the bus. And there comes a problem because if you marry the sister, you have to have positive identification that somebody has died. Otherwise, you have to suspect she's alive because, they didn't have cell phones in those days. The last thing she had told her husband was she's getting on a bus to come to Yerushalayim, but that's not enough evidence according to halacha. So they went to Rav Elyashiv. Rav Elyashiv said that they could use the dental charts because they did to find the teeth, and based on the dental charts, they were able to identify that it was her and her children, and therefore then the brother ended up marrying the sister. But this was not uncommon because you had women who died in childbirth, and somebody's got to raise the children. So the logical next person was a sister. Okay.